Thank you. When we decided to come up with disrupting price strategies through the application of data science, AI, competitor insights to utilize brand values via elasticity models, it was to drop as many buzzwords as possible in the pricing industry that are going on today. So I hope we got your attention with this title. To move in a direction where we are going to address all these technologies, I want to take you on a journey. And at SYMSON, we believe that imagination is a powerful thing. So imagine this. You are in a vibrant shopping street looking for a specific item that you want to buy. And while you are moving from shop to shop, from vendor to vendor, you are looking at the item that you want to buy, and you see that the price is different in each shop for the item that you are willing to buy, a toy for your kid or maybe for your home decoration. And this whole journey becomes a kind of pricing puzzle, right? Because you commit yourself to the deal that by the end of the day you have bought the product for the cheapest price. And now imagine this. You are in the same situation, only in your right pocket you have a device and it has access to an AI price advisor, right? And this advisor takes into account real-time data and gives you, based on your relation with the shop holder, the reviews that he had online, the current weather conditions, and even the rarity of your object, it will give you a suggestion what is the best price you should pay today for the object that you want to buy. And this sounds maybe a little bit like science fiction, but if you look at the e-commerce side of things and in the retail side, how we are developing machine learning and AI models, that is actually kind of happening. And this is disrupting the way how we look at pricing, but also, of course, the way how we look at the shopping experience that we provide to the ones that we serve in our business. So my name is Vincent Geelink. I'm the CEO of SYMSON. My background is that I did 7 years of custom software development projects where we mainly did cloud software development projects with a data proposition. And during my MBA, I did a research on the influence of the quantum computer in cybersecurity, where I mainly focused on the multidimensional side of the situation. And what I like about pricing is that pricing actually has tons of dimensions. And I think that really comes together, and that's also why I kind of fell in love with the philosophy of Felix. So Professor Dr. Felix Janssen is one of the founders of SYMSON, and he had multiple degrees and PhDs in the activities that he did. And his philosophy was that we had to combine man and machine. And he said if we were able to utilize economical models, but tweak them in such a way that they are applicable and usable in different industries, then we really can move organizations towards a situation where they can utilize technologies for their own benefits. And what we do nowadays, we still are in line with that philosophy. So we utilize scientific research and models, and we try to bring that to the next stage by interacting with the human knowledge that is in a certain domain. So today, we want to give you away a case study that we did. So to set the scene of this specific case study, this was the situation that we had at hand. We were serving a business that was doing roughly 100 million in turnovers. And of course, this is a kind of experimental journey of what you are going to do together, so we didn't get the full business at once. We started in a business unit of 20 million, selling in B2B and B2C. This is the main situation where they were at. So they were selling 50,000 SKUs in 6 different marketplaces. On top of that, they had their own e-commerce channel in 3 different countries. When we started the trajectory, they were doing price execution mainly based on their Excel sheets that they had in the organization. There were some smart tools that they were playing around with. But if we looked at how they executed price, it was mainly cost-based plus. And on top of it, they were working with the inventory levels to do extra movements on their price. So before we then move, of course, to a situation that we want to work towards a solution, we wanted to set the goals for this specific situation. So we came up with these 4 goals that should be answered by the end of the day. So we wanted to increase the gross margin, we wanted to realize interpretable insights that were predictive, and we wanted to facilitate the organization with as much data-driven decisions as possible. On top of it, if there was a possibility for them to better understand how much value of their brand was in a price, that would be something nice to add on in this 4-step goal that we set. So to do so, we always like to look at an organization and then start to identify the complexity that we are working with. And you can do that by numbers, you can do it by Excel sheets or whatsoever. What we always do is we try to visualize that in a kind of picture, because we think visualization is almost everything. So they were dealing with a catalog where they, of course, registered a lot of attributes to the products. They had categories, some strategies on category level, on brands, and this was actually how the catalog was built up. And from their own perspective, they said, yeah, we can look at it as another layer, because we can divide actually all the products that we have as we see it in the commodity products, where we had a difference between fast and slow movers. And on top of it, of course, the other side of that equation is the non-commodity products, where we also saw some fast movers and some slow movers. So this was actually the total picture of the organization in terms of what they were trying to sell in 3 different countries on 6 different marketplaces. And these are actually the dimensions, right? So if we look at the dimension, they are managing 50,000 prices in one country. But if we are doing it in 3 countries, we are actually not managing 50,000 price points, but 45,000 price points, if we want to do 1 price change a year. So 3 countries, 3 regions, first dimension. Then we moved into the other dimensions, that was that they were active on multiple platforms in these countries. So there were 2 platforms in each country where they sold their products. And now you're wondering, okay, which price are we going to place on those platforms, and what is the justifiable way to do it? So we looked into the data and came to the conclusion that there was actually justifiable proposition to look at Amazon and Google in a different way in terms of how we wanted to execute prices. Meaning that the complexity here obviously increased immensely, because now we had 2 marketplaces in each country. It's actually 6, and then 15,000 price points, meaning that we're adding another 90,000 price points to this equation that we are executing here. And then they had this desire. If we acquire customers via Google Shopping or Amazon, and the next time they buy something and they come to our own platform, we want to give them something as a loyalty, because then we don't have to pay those platforms the fees. So we want to lure them in our own platforms and then give them these discounts to them, what you maybe now can do with coupons, or they were thinking about doing it in a 5-step stage loyalty program. Well, if you design a 5-step loyalty program in each country with 50,000 products, well, I think you get the idea by now. The complexity only increases in the number of price points that we need to achieve and manage and control, etc., execute. So this is the start of the journey. But this is not where it ends, right? These are just the different regions, the setup of the catalog, but what is actually also part of the price is what it drives, right? So we identify price drivers in products. And we identify internal and external price drivers. External price drivers, we mostly look at macroeconomics, in terms to understand what is the business case that we are actually dealing with, and in which country are we operating, what is the GDP per capita, if that's relevant for the case, or what are the weather conditions, you name it. So that are things that you can take into account. For this case, we didn't. But what we did do is look at the internal factors, because that was something that they could rely on more. In internal factors, we had all types of drivers within that organization that they identified, that they said, all right, these are relevant for setting our price. So if we could know something about if we want to influence price because it's on the favorite list of someone, or there's a certain buying frequency, or it's a key value item, etc., then we can make some actions on it. And then we move, of course, to the final stage, is that we now want to design price strategies. But the price strategies should be able to utilize the data that we mentioned here before, right? So this funnel that is going through all these blocks is actually the complexity of the situation that we are dealing with. And then we came into the numbers, as I just mentioned. 3 countries, 6 marketplaces, thinking about loyalty segmentation and doing a 5-stage approach there, having a one move of the price per day, leading into 49 million price movements a year. And then if they wanted to start a loyalty program, they would add another 82 million. And now you are asking your pricing execution organization, how are we going to control and maintain these types of numbers, right? Because this is actually the execution part where organizations want to make decisions. So what we did is we tried to, of course, segment this in a way that they looked at it themselves as well. So we said, okay, let's make a few groups. So we started with the commodity slow movers, commodity fast movers, non-commodity slow, non-commodity fast, and eventually 2 more price strategies were designed on top of that. If we looked at the commodity slow movers, we said, all right, we for sure want to know what our competition is doing, and we have a sensitivity model, and out of the sensitivity model we are going to try to find evidence if there is a possibility to do something extra with the price compared to the competitors or the price distance that we already had in mind. With the commodity fast movers, and I just heard that elasticity, you didn't see a case, I invite you to join us. If there is enough transactional data, and we're talking serious numbers here, there's for sure a possibility to understand the elasticity on a product on a daily basis on a SKU level. But of course, that doesn't come with a combination to understand the competitive field that you are active in. So it's not a holy grail that only elasticity is going to decide where your product's price is going to land, right? So there are multiple factors taken into account here. Of course, and yesterday we talked about the customer life cycle value, that if your price movements are too extreme or not accepted in a certain group, you set yourself out of the game, right? But this is domain knowledge that you should fetch in your organization and digest in your price strategies. So these are just blocks that decide how far an algorithm can go with its decisions. If you look at the non-commodity slow movers, we mostly moved of price sensitivity, and it's actually coming to your story that if there's not enough information out of the transactional data, you need to add extra drivers that deliver data that eventually help you to steer in a direction that you can make a decision. And one of those is having comparable products or learn from previous stage products that are that were sold. Then we move to the non-commodity fast movers. Of course, elasticity is here a nice driver. In terms of the main driver of the strategy, because we don't have that much competition, we have a high velocity of sales, so we can act on that. Finally, there were two other strategies, and I think these are the simple ones, right? If someone just gives you a recommended retail price and you want to follow it, it's just a simple execution. And the final was the limited products, where they want to run stock-based pricing on a run rate setting, where we started to test with sensitivity, but we're not yet there to really do something with it, but also concerning the impact on the whole revenue, that was limited, of course. All right, that's the first part. Are we still with me? Yes, all right. Now, we are talking about different price strategies, so I always like to have the idea that we are talking about the same thing. So now I really want to dive in all the competitor scraping stuff and elasticity so that we for sure know that we are on the same page. So if we talk about competitive pricing, what we do is we scrape the internet and then we address the bigger platforms, Google Shopping, Amazon, in the Netherlands you have Bob.com, Coolblue, stuff like that. We get the information into our systems, we see where our competition is positioned, and if these platforms don't deliver sufficient results, we move towards direct scraping, meaning that we build custom parsers on the websites of our competition and pull the data from their website directly. That is the systems that we have running today. What we then do is decide on the price position, and we want to know where we want to place our products in terms of if we think that we are justifiable with the services that we are delivering, if we are on the top end of that competitive field or on the low end of that competitive field. Oh. That doesn't show up here. No. Okay, so in price elasticity, yes, here it is. We measure the data quality. We are going to map all the transactions that we have done. We realize a linear line to have the average of those. We execute linear regression to get the top of the parable to know how we can optimize to which extent the price can be put down. And then we realize a strategy in how much percentage the price change can move at each time that we reprice the product, but also a certain limitation, of course, how far we can go. And I think the one that we discussed earlier here, and what we are doing as well, is price sensitivity. And I think this is a new asset, more or less, to the game, what's developing rapidly, and what we see in a lot of organizations being used in more dimensions. So what is price sensitivity, and how do we execute it in terms of methodology? What we do is we identify drivers. So what we do is we look at the data set, and we look into organizations and have interviews with your employees to understand how are these drivings coming about, right? So what is the gut feeling in the organization, and can we quantify the gut feeling? Then we identify those drives, and then we build an algorithm. And that algorithm takes into account all these factors that we have decided upon, and that can be amongst the volume and the price, of course. Once the machine learning model has been built, then we run it across all the products where we want to execute this strategy. We get the results in, we read the results, we interpret them, we do an A/B test on the results that were there, and then we bring that back, of course, to the drawing table to see if we want to intervene in this model, yes or no. But there's an important step to be made in this process, because deploying machine learning models in your organization without having the buy-in of everyone who is involved in pricing is pretty hard, right? So what we do is we interview everyone, in this case also everyone in the organization that was involved in pricing, and then we developed all together with everyone who was involved in pricing the conceptual model of how they thought prices were influenced by which drivers. And this really helped to have the buy-in of the whole organization to move forward with the development of these models. Because eventually, once this model is done, of course, the data that has to be collected to prove this model is going to decide which driver is going to be in the price and which one isn't. So eventually, when you're done with this investigation, only a few drivers will remain. But if you give back the results to the organization on the R-squared on each two variables that we did a measurement across, then the whole organization also accepts that this is actually the truth out of the whole organization where we have distilled to a model that we have running today. And this is something that it could look like. So each driver has a certain influence, and we combine the human perspective with the machine perspective, because there is more to the table than only data. And your employees already work for lots of amounts of time in the organization, and they have this expertise and feeling that is hard for us to quantify, of course. So that's why we work in this way, also with this organization. Eventually, if we run then the model across all the products in this organization, we identify different sensitivity clusters. And if we then move towards building the price strategies, we decide the intensity of the price strategy in terms of how aggressive are we going to be on the margin, on how sensitive the product is to how non-sensitive, of course, the product is. And that helps to validate the story that we have made. Because if we are on these clusters, let's say for 95% right, I think we have a solid case. How do we then incorporate these types of techniques in this specific organization? So how did we do it? So what we do is we build building blocks out of each solution that we build, and it's just drag and drop. So if you want to start with the cost base, you drag in the cost. If you want to do a minimum margin on top of it, you drop in minimum margin. So the incorporation of just dragging and dropping this stuff in, and by the pencil they could tweak parameters, we were able to enable the category managers to build their own strategies within a category. It's quite easy, they could release it quickly, and they could do their own A/B testing with a certain amount of course, governance over it in terms of how far they could go with these experiments. Because developing all these types of models also obligates you to decide that you have to make it feasible to execute for everyone that's in the organization, or at least in pricing, right? Because we have to do it eventually all together. So the result eventually was that we increased the gross margin, so we are heading now towards 4%. Of course, it's a trajectory. It goes step by step, and we cannot make too big of a steps, of course, because there are some limitations to how far the model can go, because the organization doesn't want us to move that aggressively. On top of it, we delivered, of course, interpretable insights that were predictive in terms of out of elasticity models, of course, and transactional data. You can already distill your demand forecasting, so that is nice to work with. On top of it, we could deliver them data-driven decision, because we show them how we come to a price decision, and then it's up to them if they trust the whole sequence that we have set up. And if that's the case, they can say, okay, we follow the data set here and think it is sufficient. We even have data quality thresholds in place to make then the data-driven decision. And finally, of course, by understanding how they could leverage their price a little bit by monitoring competition and then executing the elasticity module, they understand there was still a little bit of air on top of the products that they could execute. And actually, that is how we executed this business case. I think it's a lot of information to digest, because we are heading a lot of directions. So what I did for you, for your convenience, is behind this QR code, there's a video of this keynote as well, so that you can see it back if you want to dive into the methodology that we have deployed here. And I hope I have inspired you a little bit so that you can challenge your own status quo in pricing. Thank you.